This is Community Radio Networks. On this last day of January 2024. Wishing you all a lovely Wednesday morning. We'll have all the information that you need to go take on the day. Right here on Community Radio Networks. And we will start with the world news. Later we will have financial news, your foreign currency exchange rates included in that. Your social calendar, some stories from the annals of history that happened on this last date in January. And plenty more information all headed your way right here on Community Radio Networks. But let's start with the world news first. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabnam Matgil. President Biden has said he has made a decision on how to respond to the drone attack that killed 3 U.S. soldiers and injured dozens of others at a base in northeast Jordan. As he departed the White House yesterday, a reporter asked him whether he had made that decision in response to the attack. He vowed to retaliate and hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of our choosing for that deadly attack, which injured also more than 30 soldiers. Iran will respond to any threat from the U.S., said the Iranian Revolutionary Guards chief Hossein Salami today, as Washington weighs its response to the killing of American servicemen by Tehran-aligned militants. Iran has threatened this morning to decisively respond to any U.S. attack on the Islamic Republic following President Biden's linking of Tehran to the killing of the 3 U.S. soldiers at a military base in Jordan. Iran's fundamental policy is a strong response to enemies who launch attacks on its soil, said Tehran's ambassador to the United Nations. Amir Saeed Iravani told reporters at the UN headquarters in New York yesterday that any strikes on Iran's territory or its interests or citizens abroad would face a decisive response. Yemen's Houthi group said it would keep up attacks on U.S. and British warships in the Red Sea in what it calls acts of self-defense, stoking fears of long-term disruptions to world trade. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan meeting today with top Israeli official Ron Dermer on the Gaza conflict at the White House. European Union member states want to launch a Red Sea naval mission by mid-February to protect ships from attacks by Yemen's Houthi militia and could decide its command structure this morning, according to the Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell. Dr. Mohammed Salha, a health official at the Al-Auda hospital in northern Gaza Strip, has confirmed that the hospital buildings and yard were subjected to Israeli shelling at dawn today. This was the second time in 48 hours. At least 26,900 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli strikes so far. Also, several unidentified Palestinians were laid to rest at a mass burial in Gaza yesterday after Israeli authorities handed over bodies they had been holding in Israel. Many onlookers covered their noses with masks as about 100 bodies were placed in graves in the southern city of Rafah before bulldozers piled sand on them. Health officials confirmed they had received the 100 bodies, and Israel has repeated new evacuation orders for neighborhoods in western Gaza City, where 88,000 Palestinians had been living in shelters. Israel is demanding that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres resign following accusations that UN staff were involved in the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. Israel has accused 12 UN staff at the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East of this involvement. 15 leaders of the UN agencies and non-governmental humanitarian aid organizations have appealed to the countries that paused funding for UNRWA to consider their decisions. Cutting off funding to the UN Palestinian Refugee Agency will have catastrophic consequences for Gaza. Norway, a top donor to the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, is urging countries that have cut funding to the agency to consider the consequences of their actions on the population in Gaza. UN Security Council is going to discuss the ICJ's interim ruling on Israel's invasion of Gaza today. South Africa wants the UN Security Council to outline measures that it will take to enforce that International Court of Justice's interim ruling against Israel as it seeks to sustain international pressure to bring an end to hostilities in the Gaza Strip. The doors closed today on nominations for the 2024 Nobel Peace Prize, with peace activists connected to the wars in Gaza and Ukraine among the known entries. The Norwegian Nobel Committee keeps the nominations secret, but those with nomination rights sometimes make their picks public. And there are academics at the Free University Amsterdam who said they've been nominated. The Middle East-based organization Eco-Peace, Women Wage Peace, and Women of the Sun for peace efforts between Israelis and Palestinians. House Republicans voted early this morning to advance their impeachment articles against Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, moving closer to taking the rare step of impeaching a cabinet official. The Republicans early this morning forwarded that resolution to boot Homeland Security Secretary from his post over the objection of Democrats who say the GOP has failed to meet the bar for impeachment. The House Homeland Security Committee voted to advance these articles of impeachment against Alejandro Mayorkas, teeing up a floor vote that could make him the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in nearly 150 years. After a 15-plus-hour meeting that at times grew contentious, the GOP-led committee voted 18 to 15 along party lines to advance two impeachment articles to the House floor, where Republicans hold a slim majority. Debate and votes on the articles are expected next week. And the fight continues between the state of Texas and the federal government over the border. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has said the state will keep using razor wire along the border, even if the federal government keeps cutting it down. This goes against a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. The Texas Supreme Court has agreed to temporarily halt State Attorney General Ken Paxton's scheduled testimony in a whistleblower lawsuit that was at the heart of the impeachment charges brought against him last year, delaying what could have been the Republicans' first sworn statements on corruption allegations. Former President Trump endorsed a challenger to Texas House Speaker Dave Phelan, who has drawn the ire of Republicans statewide and nationally after supporting Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's impeachment last year. David Covey, who's running against Phelan in Texas's 21st State House district, now has the backing of Trump and Paxton ahead of the GOP primary in March. Donald Trump is due to meet with one of America's biggest unions today as he competes for the support of labor groups ahead of a likely general election rematch with Democratic President Joe Biden in November. He's due to sit down with the leadership and some rank-and-file members of the Teamsters days after the former Republican president reacted angrily to losing out on the endorsement from another union, the United Auto Workers. His meeting with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters comes during a 24 presidential campaign in which the economy is front and center, and unions have been a resurgence there in the U.S., with many, including the Teamsters, winning new significant contracts. After initially staying out of the 2024 presidential race, billionaire hedge fund manager Ken Griffin has thrown his support behind Nikki Haley as she takes on Donald Trump for the Republican presidential nomination. Griffin made two contributions in December and this month to a super PAC backing Haley's campaign, totaling $5 million. The U.S. Department of State has issued a new warning for the Bahamas and Americans who intend to travel to the country. The warning comes as the island sees a spike in violent crime that has impacted the local population. The advisory was issued on the 26th of this month and warns travelers to exercise increased caution if they are planning on going to the Caribbean country. The crime hitting the country is burglaries, armed robberies, and sexual assaults, according to the State Department. A Kenyan opposition leader has accused President William Ruto of planning to defy a court ruling against the deployment of police to Haiti. Last week, successfully, he had challenged the planned deployment in court, saying the president can only deploy the army and not the police. The court said the mission was illegal. Venezuela said it'll stop accepting deportees from the U.S. if the Biden administration follows through on a threat to renew sanctions. Migrant deportation flights would be immediately revoked as of the 13th of February if the U.S. takes the wrong step of intensifying economic aggression against Venezuela, according to Vice President Delcy Rodriguez. Federal police in Brazil conducted raids of homes and offices belonging to former President Jair Bolsonaro and his son Carlos yesterday, amid allegations that the former leader's administration spied on political enemies using high-tech intelligence software. The news follows similar raids last week of Bolsonaro's former top intelligence official Alexandre Ramajam, who is alleged to have run the clandestine espionage program. Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva was disqualified from the 22 Olympics almost 2 years after the teenager's doping case caused turmoil at the Beijing Games. The verdict from the Court of Arbitration for Sport means the Russians are set to be stripped of the gold medal in figure skating's team event. The U.S. finished second and is set to be named the Olympic champion instead. The International Olympic Committee decided not to present any medals for the event in Beijing, where the then 15-year-old Valieva was the star performer hours before her positive test for a banned heart medicine was revealed. The Pentagon has successfully tested a new long-range precision bomb for Ukraine that is expected to arrive on the battlefield as soon as today. Ukraine's armed forces shot down a Russian Su-35 fighter jet over the Luhansk Oblast yesterday, and Russia's defense ministry says Russia and Ukraine have exchanged 195 prisoners of war each. The Russians attacked Ukraine with 20 Shahed drones and 13 Iskander missiles last night, with Ukraine's Air Force and air defense destroying 14 of the UAVs. The Kremlin has formed its own mercenary group to operate in Africa. It's said that Vladimir Putin's government was looking to take advantage of the demise of the Wagner Group, which operated extensively in several countries on the continent. The new group is called the Africa Corps and shares its name with the Nazi forces which fought in North Africa in the Second World War. 20,000 men are expected to be recruited for operations primarily in the Sahel region on the southern edge of the Sahara Desert. And the European Union leaders at a summit tomorrow will focus on the one member state blocking a €50 billion war support package for Ukraine. Hungary, the country in the bloc with the closest ties to Russia. And German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, Czech Republic Prime Minister Petr Fiala, Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, and the Netherlands Prime Minister Mark Rutte have written a joint letter calling for collective efforts to provide long-term support to Ukraine. Meanwhile, France's first out gay prime minister says the widespread acceptance he's enjoyed shows how much the country has evolved. The nation was tearing itself apart just 20 years ago over same-sex marriage, but being French in 2024 means being able to be prime minister and openly gay, said Gabriel Attal in his first major address to Parliament. Farmers blocked more traffic arteries across Belgium, France and Italy today as they sought to disrupt trade at major ports and other economic lifelines. They also moved closer to Brussels on the eve of a major European Union summit in a continued push for better prices for their produce and less bureaucracy in their work. And Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk raised the prospect of holding snap ballots less than 4 months after an election if his budget is blocked, stoking a political fight between his government and the nationalist opposition. The European Union has raised concerns that Hong Kong's plan for a new national security law may weaken the city's freedom, with business leaders calling for greater clarity. The EU concerned that some definitions and provisions in the proposed law will equal the scope and draconian measures of the national security law, even go beyond those and further weaken Hong Kong's remaining freedoms. Britain handed Hong Kong over to China in 1997 under a one-country, two-system regime, with the city having its own legal system. One of the Chinese government's top political institutions has removed a prominent rocket research chief, adding to the number of apparent purges in Beijing over the past several months. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. In a significant transition marked by tradition and modernity, Sultan Ibrahim Iskandar was sworn in as Malaysia's 17th king, bringing his unique blend of business acumen, forthrightness and cultural heritage to the forefront of the nation's ceremonial monarchy. Sultan Ibrahim takes the reins from Sultan Abdullah Sultan Ahmad Shah of Pahang State, whose tenure was marked by challenging times, navigating through the complexities of COVID-19 lockdown in a phase of political unrest. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has dialed up his criticism of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., saying his successor is looking to cement his rule beyond the current term limit in the Constitution. The 78-year-old ex-leader in his latest tirade threatened to split his native Mindanao region from the rest of the nation. He also stepped up a war of words with Marcos, with the two trading accusations of drug use. And a top court in Thailand has ordered the country's main opposition Move Forward party to cease all attempts to amend the country's stringent royal insult law, a centerpiece of its reformist agenda that helped it win last year's election. BCCI Secretary Jay Shah's term as the president of the Asian Cricket Council was today unanimously extended by a year at its annual general meeting, and his extension proposed by Sri Lanka cricket president Shami Silva for the second time, and the nomination was unanimously backed by all members of the Asian Cricket Council. Premier India off-spinner Ravichandran Ashwin today retained the top spot in the latest ICC Test rankings. Pace spearhead Jasprit Bumrah, on the other hand, ascended a spot to fourth after the first test against England in Hyderabad. Asian Games bronze medalist Vishnu Saravanan has become the first Indian sailor to qualify for successive Olympics. The 24-year-old Subedar from the Mumbai-based Army yachting node secured his berth for the Paris Games at the ILCS 7 World Championship. Ahead of Prime Minister Modi's February 13th and 14th visit to the UAE for an Indian community event and a dedication ceremony for a Hindu temple, officials from the Indian Embassy and the consulate have gone on overdrive as preparations gather momentum. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to address the Indian Community Summit, Ahlan Modi, Hello Modi, at Abu Dhabi's Sheikh Zayed Stadium on the 13th of February, and is scheduled to attend a dedication ceremony at the BAPS Hindu temple, getting the finishing touches at the UAE capital the next day on the 14th of February. India's ruling party expanded its control to nearly two-thirds of the country's states, strengthening Prime Minister Modi's bid to extend his decade in office in nationwide elections in coming months. The BJP, either outright or as a coalition member, now governs 17 of India's 28 states after adding the eastern region of Bihar into its fold this weekend. The states have a total population of 720.6 million and account for about 55.24% of the 543 lawmakers seats in Parliament. Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren, in a letter to the Enforcement Directorate, said he will record his statement before the agency officials tonight at his residence. Ahead of the Lok Sabha elections, Kerala's secular chief PC George has merged his party with the BJP today. And Rahul Gandhi's car was pelted with stones in West Bengal's Malda this morning as the Congress leader entered the state from Bihar for a second time with this Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra. And it is West Bengal's Chief Minister Mamta Banerjee who claimed that the Congress leader's vehicle was not attacked in the state but in Bihar. She, however, condemned the incident and said that the vehicle entered the state with its rear window pane already broken. The Enforcement Directorate issued fresh summons to Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the excise policy case. The Aam Aadmi Party chief has been told to appear before the Central Probe Agency this Friday, and this is the fifth summon that has been issued to him. He failed to appear before the probe agency on previous occasions. Chaos erupted at Terminal 2 of the Delhi airport today as Indigo cancelled its flight to Deoghar for the second consecutive day. And setting a new practice, President Draupadi Murmu entered the new Parliament building escorted by Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar and Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla, with an official carrying the Sangol, adopted as a cultural symbol by the government. Ahead of her arrival, Rajiv Sharma, senior marshal in the Lok Sabha and dressed in traditional attire with decorated scarf and a turban, removed the Sangol and walked in procession with Speaker Birla, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi, and Secretaries General of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha Utpal Kumar Singh and PC Modi in tow amid drum rolls. President Murmu reached the new Parliament building in a 6-horse buggy accompanied by the presidential bodyguards riding horses. Construction has resumed on the Indian tunnel that had collapsed last year, trapping 41 workers for 17 days, with at least one of those men actually back on the job. A worker from West Bengal who was among those trapped in the under-construction Silkyara Road tunnel. We do have the Supreme Court of India refusing to allow a 26-year-old woman who had lost her husband in October last year to terminate her over 32-week pregnancy, saying the medical board has held that there were no abnormalities in the fetus. The bench has refused to interfere with the order of the Delhi High Court, recalling its earlier verdict, allowing the woman to terminate her then 29-week-old fetus. The Madras High Court has said that temples are not tourist or picnic spots and directed the Tamil Nadu's Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Department to install boards at all temples in the state indicating that non-Hindus are not allowed beyond the Kodimaran. The Kodimaran, situated after the main entrance and before the Sanctum Sanctorum, serves as the boundary for non-Hindu entry. It is a big victory for the Hindu side in the Gyanvapi dispute case, where a Varanasi court today allowed to offer prayers inside the Vyaska Tehkhana, the sealed basement area of the mosque complex. The court issued this order in response to a plea filed by the head priest of the Acharya Ved Vyaspit temple, Shailendra Kumar Pathak Vyas, seeking worship of Srinagar Gauri, other visible and invisible deities in the cellar of the Gyanvapi mosque. The Foreign Office in Islamabad today said that the bodies of 9 Pakistani nationals who were shot dead in Iran last week will be airlifted today from the Taftan border to Multan. 9 Pakistani workers gunned down by unidentified attackers in Iran's Sistan Baluchistan province near the border with Pakistan on the 27th of this month, as the neighboring countries sought to ease tensions after deadly cross-border fire. Pakistan and the US have signed an agreement on cultural property protection, which establishes import restrictions on certain types of archaeological and ethnological material originating from Pakistan and entering the US. U.S. Ambassador to Pakistan Donald Blum and Secretary National Heritage and Culture Humaira Ahmed signed this agreement at a ceremony in Islamabad, and the new bilateral cultural agreement highlights the diversity of the Pakistani nation and sets the stage for further bilateral cooperation. Today's signing underscores the U.S. global commitment to cultural heritage protection and preservation. In yet another blow to Imran Khan and his party, the former premier and his wife Bushra Bibi today were sentenced to 14 years in jail in the Toshakhana reference. Last month, the National Accountability Bureau had filed a fresh reference against the two in an accountability court for retaining a jewelry set received from Saudi Crown Prince against an undervalued assessment. This is Imran's third conviction, including the one on the Cypher case a day earlier. He's already out of the race for the February 8th general elections. It is this verdict that has come 8 days before the February 8th general elections, which the PTI is contesting amid a state crackdown and without an electoral symbol. Today's conviction is Imran's third, and according to the verdict delivered today, he and his wife barred from holding any public office for 10 years and slapped with a fine of 87 million rupees each. While the PTI founder was presented during the hearing, his wife did not appear before the court. And the Lahore High Court today directed the Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority, PEMRA, to ensure that former Prime Minister Imran Khan, as well as candidates of all political parties, were given free and unrestricted access to media ahead of the forthcoming February 8th general elections. A PTI-backed independent candidate has been shot dead in the Siddiqabad area of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's Bajor district this morning, and this incident comes a day after 4 people were killed while 6 wounded in a bomb blast at a PTI rally in Balochistan's Sibi. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you today. I will have your financial news, and that's coming up for you shortly. Stay with me right here on Community Radio Networks, and I'll make sure you have all the information to get you ready to take on the day today, the last day of January. Wishing you all a lovely Wednesday, the 31st of January. All right, let's go ahead and get you now all your financial news that you need to know for you to take on the day today. And it is the last day of January today. We'll start with the foreign currency exchange rates brought to you right here on Community Radio Networks. The Indian rupee is at 83.03, trading in a narrow range against the US dollar in early trade this morning as market participants remain cautious ahead of the interim budget that'll be released on the 1st of February, and that is tomorrow. Pakistani rupees at 279.63. Bangladeshi taka at 109.56. The Sri Lankan rupee at 315.44. Nepalese rupee 132.90. The British pound at 0.79. The euro at 0.92. The Canadian dollar 1.34. The Australian dollar 1.51. Mexican peso 17.12. Chinese yuan 7.16. Japanese yen 147.31. Russian ruble 90.28, Thai baht 35.38, and the Turkish lira at 30.35. The naira's official exchange rate has fallen below its street value, signaling that the Nigerian currency may be close to its fair market level after plunging to a record against the dollar this week. The naira closed at 1,482.57 per dollar. U.S. equity futures slumped after earnings from tech giants fell short of Wall Street's lofty expectations and as investors prepared for the first interest rate decision of the year from the Federal Reserve. Contracts on the Nasdaq 100 slid 1.2%, while those on the S&P 500 retreated 0.5%. Microsoft Corporation, Alphabet Inc. and Advanced Micro Devices dropped in pre-market trading after their updates failed to match the market hype around tech megacaps and artificial intelligence that has helped drive the recent record-setting rally in U.S. stocks. West Texas Intermediate crude rose to settle near $78 a barrel, bolstered by a waiver of technical trading. And total gold demand has hit a record last year and is expected to expand again this year as the U.S. Federal Reserve moves towards cutting interest rates, potentially aiding prices, according to the World Gold Council. The Federal Reserve is widely expected to hold interest rates steady this afternoon, but investors will be watching and listening for any signs of when the central bank could begin cutting. Investors are betting on 5 cuts this year and that they will begin in either March or May. Google parent company Alphabet reported its fourth quarter earnings after the bell yesterday, missing analyst expectations on ad revenue, the heart of the tech giant's business, and the stock slid over 5% lower in pre-market trading today, part of a broad decline for the tech-heavy Nasdaq. Google parent Alphabet posting, though, out there as Microsoft announced its second quarter earnings yesterday, beating expectations on the top and bottom lines. The company reported adjusted earnings per share of 2.93 on revenue of $62 billion, beating expectations. Microsoft Corporation, Alphabet Inc., Google, and Advanced Micro Devices, 3 companies working harder than nearly anyone to weave artificial intelligence into their products, are finding that investor expectations for the technology are hard to meet. And shares of these tech giants have slipped in pre-market trading this morning after they delivered results for the last 3 months of 23 and forecasts for the current quarter. Microsoft dropping as much as 2.3%, Google fell as much as 5.9%, and AMD dropped up to 7.3% before markets opened in New York. General Motors reported top and bottom line beats for the fourth quarter and issued 24 full-year profit guidance that matched its initial forecast for 23, and shares of the automaker closed up 7.8%, with the stock hitting its highest level since August of last year. With labor shortages subsiding but still concerning, just 4% of CEOs are making return to office a top priority this year. AI-related companies have lost $190 billion in stock market value late yesterday after Microsoft, Alphabet, and Advanced Micro Devices delivered these quarterly results that failed to impress investors who had sent their stocks soaring. The CEOs of 5 top social media platforms, including Meta's Mark Zuckerberg and X's Linda Yaccarino, are being hauled in front of the Senate today for a hearing to highlight the continuing risk of child sexual abuse material on their sites. A Delaware judge has tossed out Elon Musk's record-breaking $56 billion Tesla pay package, calling the compensation granted by the EV maker's board an unfathomable sum that was unfair to shareholders. Shares of Tesla dropped 2% in pre-market trade, and some investors seized on the ruling in hopes it might prompt Tesla to overhaul its governance. Elon's $55 billion pay package at Tesla Inc. struck down by this Delaware judge after a shareholder challenged it as excessive. Tech billionaire Elon Musk has said that his brain science startup company Neuralink had implanted a device in a human for the first time, a possible step towards a product that he said would allow people to control almost any external device just by thinking. And he has made that announcement on X. Bankrupt pharmacy chain Rite Aid Corporation hired liquidators at the request of the company lenders, even as the retailer continues negotiating with at least two potential buyers. Two liquidation consultants will help the company run going out of business sales for any stores to be shuttered. Amazon called off its purchase of robot vacuum maker iRobot, blaming undue and disproportionate regulatory hurdles after the European Union has signaled its objection to that deal. The company behind a global recall of sleep apnea machines has said it'll stop selling the devices in the U.S. under a tentative agreement with regulators that could cost the manufacturer nearly $400 million. Device maker Philips has recalled these more than 5 million pressurized breathing machines due to risks that their internal foam can break down over time, leading users to inhale tiny particles and fumes while they sleep. PayPal Holdings will reduce its workforce by about 9% as Chief Executive Officer Alex Chriss, who took over in September, grapples with rising competition, profit pressures, and a raft of analyst downgrades. Paramount Global shares have jumped in pre-market trading today after reports said media mogul Byron Allen has offered $14 billion to acquire the company. Morgan Stanley downgraded the maker of Jack Daniel's whiskey to a hold equivalent rating, citing weaker than expected demand for spirits after strong growth during the COVID-19 pandemic. And although Brown-Forman Corporation lowered its annual forecasts last month, it was an analyst that views the company's outlook as aggressive, given muted industry growth and lackluster market share trends. Walmart announcing its first stock split since 1999, sending the stock higher in after-hours trading. Walmart expects the number of outstanding common shares to jump from approximately 2.7 billion shares to 8.1 billion, and the company's last stock split was last announced in March of 1999. If your goal is to have a job that pays a six-figure salary, you may want to head to Walmart. The retailer is making a big investment in its managers, who now have the opportunity to earn more than $400,000 a year. Starting in April, Walmart store managers will receive an annual grant of Walmart stock. While the amount is based on store format, managers at the supercenters will receive $20,000 in stock every year. After a record-breaking run atop the streaming charts in the summer and fall, Suits can claim one more milestone at the end of 23. It's the most streamed show over the course of a year in the admittedly brief history of Nielsen's rankings. It was a huge year for library series, which claimed all of the top 10 overall spots in the year-end rankings. But there was a big upset among original series. Ted Lasso was the most viewed original show across the platforms, and Nielsen measures, despite this, running on one of the fewest subscribers, Apple TV Plus. It's the first show that doesn't stream on Netflix to take a #1 ranking among either original or acquired series in the 4-year history of Nielsen's year-end charts. In 47 out of 50 states, more single women own homes than single men, according to a new study that on online lending marketplace. If you're worried about your memory fading as you get older, there is hope, as a new study has found that learning to play a musical instrument or joining a choir is linked to better memory and thinking skills as we age. We always like celebrating when Texas is #1 in something. Unfortunately, this isn't a list we'd like to appear on, but some folks might actually like it. According to a study from Counseling Psychology, Texas ranked #1 in the nation as the most narcissistic state. The study collected Google search data over the past year in every state and the 30 most populous cities, dividing the search terms into 4 categories: learning about narcissists, narcissists in a relationship, and narcissists in families, and narcissists at work. And based on these findings, Texas led the nation with 92.5 narcissistic search score. If you're single and ready to mingle in Texas, you are in luck. A new study says that Texas is the #2 state in the country for singles. Very well-rounded for singles who are looking to get out and hopefully find that special someone. We have a number or dating in Texas, which is overall ranking second for Texas, and also 21st for online dating opportunities, 18th for mobile dating opportunities, and 10th median annual household income, as first in restaurants per capita and first in movie theaters per capita. That's Texas. And as flu cases surge in North Texas, parents and caregivers are grappling with distinguishing flu symptoms from those of COVID-19 and other respiratory infections. Spike in flu cases has been notable, particularly following children returning to school and spending more time together. Fort Worth City Council has approved a contract for a company that will review security in entertainment districts. Safe Night LLC will lead a public safety assessment in downtown Fort Worth near Southside, the historic Fort Worth Stockyards, and West 7th. A man who taught at the Great Lakes Academy in Plano is charged with grooming a child. Plano police arrested 23-year-old Jacob Thomas Allred this week. And it might be a perfect time for a blizzard, but a Dairy Queen near Waco offering a little more than tasty frozen treats to customers. In an operation called Operation Blizzard, 10 people were arrested for operating a drug ring and selling methamphetamine around multiple spots in Clifton, Texas, including the local Dairy Queen. Americans may be known for scarfing down hamburgers and hot dogs, but a new research shows we're apparently obsessed with Mexican food so much that 99% of all Americans live near at least one Mexican restaurant. Also, a cruise ship rescued 2 men in the Gulf of Mexico who say their own boat had sunk. The 2 were spotted by the crew of Carnival Jubilee near an island off the coast of Cancun. Carnival says its Jubilee had left port in Galveston for a cruise of the Western Caribbean, and these crew members spotted a kayak near Isla Mujeres. And the crew of Jubilee rescued the 2 men from that kayak. A ship carrying around 14,000 sheep and 2,000 cattle is marooned off the coast of Australia in sweltering heat after it was forced to abandon a trip through the Red Sea, causing an outcry among people concerned about the animals' welfare. Mercedes-Benz Group AG insignia has flashed on screens as thousands of guests thronged a hotel best known for hosting Dubai's biggest horse race. The glitzy event marked the unveiling of the city's latest luxury tower, where some apartments will cost up to $10 million apiece. The $1 billion development with unobstructed views of the world's tallest tower, the Burj Khalifa, is being built by Bengati Properties in a first-of-its-kind tie-up with the German automaker. And that is Mercedes-Benz Group AG. The number of companies going bust in the UK jumped to the highest level in 30 years as businesses were hit by a combination of high borrowing costs, surging inflation, and weakening consumer demand. In 23, there were more than 25,000 registered company insolvencies across England and Wales. Mergers and acquisitions in South Africa are set to rebound this year as the $405 billion economy starts to show signs of recovery. The Philippines overtook Vietnam and Malaysia to become Southeast Asia's fastest growing economy last year, with expansion driven by consumption, services, and investment. A Hong Kong court has ordered Chinese real estate giant Evergrande Group to undergo liquidation following multiple failed debt restructuring attempts, and the company has over $300 billion in liabilities and hundreds of unfinished apartment complexes nationwide. China's global dominance in electric cars helped it overtake Japan as the world's biggest vehicle exporter last year. Japanese giants such as Toyota and Nissan have been much more cautious than their Chinese counterparts like BYD on electric vehicles, banking instead on hybrid models. FBI Director Christopher Wray is expected to warn that Chinese hackers are preparing to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to the U.S., positioning on American infrastructure in preparation to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to American citizens and communities if or when China decides the time has come to strike. Sponsorship companies acting in conduit will no longer be able to game the H-1B cap lottery system through multiple applications for the same individual. Final rules introduced by the Biden administration early this morning changed the visa application mechanism to one that is beneficiary-centric, and the new mechanism will also apply for H-1B cap e-registrations that opens on the 6th of March for the 25 season. The Ministry of Culture and Tourism of Turkey and Turkey Tourism Promotion and Development Agency, in collaboration with the Travel Agents Association of India, concluded the first leg of their mega six-city India Roadshow 24. In attendance at the roadshow were 30 key stakeholders from Turkey, including tour operators and hoteliers. Samsung Electronics has said this morning its fourth quarter operating profits sank 34.4% from a year earlier, due largely to sluggish semiconductor business, but its memory chip segment turned to the black on recovering demand. The world's largest mobile phone and memory chip maker's operating profit amounted to 2.82 trillion wons. That's $2.12 billion for the October to December period. Samsung is planning to start manufacturing laptops at its Noida factory in India this year. And the world is on the cusp of what's likely to be the last big refining boom as India embarks on a capacity expansion to accommodate the country's rising thirst for fossil fuels. The South Asian nation has set in motion a building blitz of its oil refineries to raise production of traditional transport fuels such as gasoline and diesel, which could lift capacity by more than 20% over the next 5 years. Maruti Suzuki India today reported 33% increase in consolidated net profit for the third quarter that ended in December. And the growth of 8 key infrastructure sectors slowed to 3.8% last month against 8.3% a year ago. In the core sector, coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizer, steel, cement and electricity growth. India's gold demand witnessed an on-year decline of 3% at 747.5 tons last year, and going ahead the spurt in demand could be anywhere between 800 and 900 tons if prices hold out and are not significantly volatile, according to the World Gold Council. Kalyan Jewellers reporting a 21.51% growth in consolidated profit after tax. And Wipro is reportedly cutting hundreds of jobs in a bid to enhance its margins, which was 16% for the December quarter, significantly lower compared to Tata Consultancy Services at 25%, Infosys at 20.5%, and HCL Technologies at 19.8%. Paytm Payments Bank has been barred by the Reserve Bank of India from accepting deposits or top-ups in any counter-account wallets and FASTags after the 29th of February, reportedly due to non-compliance of regulations and supervisory concerns. Cinema exhibitor PVR Inox today reported a consolidated net profit of 12.8 crore rupees in the third quarter of the current fiscal. And Sun Pharmaceutical Industries today reported a 16.52% rise in its consolidated net profit. And generative artificial intelligence provides huge opportunity in the financial services space, and as a leading global player, Sun Life is actively engaged in developing such tools that are beneficial for both clients and employees. Domestic airline Zoom today operated a flight from the national capital to Ayodhya, marking the relaunch of its service after nearly 4 years. Currently, the carrier has a fleet of 5 Bombardier planes, each having 50 seats. Homegrown FMCG major Dabur India Limited reported an increase of 6.24% in consolidated net profit, and a division bench of the Bombay High Court delivered a split verdict on a bunch of petitions challenging the amended information technology rules dealing with fake news against the government on social media. To honor Indian sportspersons and their relentless pursuit for excellence, the Times of India back with the 6th edition of its flagship property TOI Sports Awards, or TOISA, and it'll be held in the city of the Nawabs, Lucknow, on the 23rd of February in this year, and we'll see the presence of some of the biggest names from the world of Indian sports. Like last year, this year's theme too is More Sweat, More Glory, as a tribute to the indomitable spirit of our athletes and para-athletes across different sports who shone the brightest in 23. Despite an improved global outlook, the International Monetary Fund lowered Pakistan's economic growth forecast to 2% for the current fiscal year, down 0.5 percentage points from its October estimate. And the Pakistan Stock Exchange today managed modest gains a day after losing 900 points as foreign selling eased. The State Bank of Pakistan has invited the general public to submit designs for new currency notes as it initiates the process of replacing the existing banknotes. The business community in Karachi has expressed deep concern over the State Bank's decision to maintain its policy rate at a steep 22%. And the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan, DRAP, has directed pharmaceutical companies to recall 9 contaminated syrups. In the past 2 months, they have found at least 7 pharmaceutical companies involved in producing syrups with high proportions of propylene glycol, a prohibited substance. And they have issued these syrups manufactured by the companies PDH Pharmaceuticals, Razi Therapeutics, Caesar International, and others that are said to be contaminated. And the syrups include Allerphine, Zevirol, Texcol DM, Texcol EX, Virol, Torax DM, Bronile, and Spexzyme. The regular seized a batch of these imported from a Thailand-based company after detecting impurities on these. And of course, the acceptable level of these impurities used in cough syrups is 1.1%, and any contamination above that level can lead to multiple organ failure. This batch that was imported from Thailand's Dow Chemical had an impurity level of 25%. The issue of poisonous syrups caused global embarrassment for Pakistan last month when the Maldives informed about contamination in medicines imported from Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you. I would have one more segment coming up in which we'll make your social calendar as well as get you all the information you need to know about the stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, the 31st of January. I do want to thank all the supporters that make all this possible. Community Radio Networks is brought to you by support from Discount Power, from Houston EB5, from the Ahluwalia Law Offices, from the Wyndham Hotels Banquet Halls in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, My Kalachi, as well as their new restaurant, which is called Ruchi Palace, Sri Vimal, and their restaurant called Eggaholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. Huge thanks going out to them. And I have your final segment coming up shortly. Some stories from the annals of history that happened on this last date of January. It was at Westminster in London when Guy Fawkes, a chief conspirator in the plot to blow up the British Parliament building, jumps to his death moments before his execution for treason. On the eve of a general parliamentary session scheduled in 1605, Sir Thomas Knivet, a justice of the peace, found Guy Fawkes lurking in a cellar of the Parliament building. He was detained and the premises was thoroughly searched. Nearly 2 tons of gunpowder were found hidden within the cellar. In his interrogation, he revealed that he was a participant in an English Catholic conspiracy organized by Robert Catesby to annihilate England's entire Protestant government, including King James I. The king was to have attended Parliament on that November day, the 5th of November. And over the next few months, English authorities killed or captured all of the conspirators of this gunpowder plot, but also arrested, tortured, or killed dozens of innocent English Catholics. After a brief trial, Guy Fawkes was sentenced, along with the other surviving chief conspirators, to be hanged, drawn, and quartered in London. On the 30th of January, the gruesome public executions began in London, and on the 31st, today's date, he was called to meet his fate. While climbing to the hanging platform, however, he jumped from the ladder and broke his neck, dying instantly. In remembrance of the gunpowder plot, Guy Fawkes Day is celebrated across Great Britain every year on the 5th of November as dusk falls in the evening. Villagers and city dwellers across Britain light bonfires, set off fireworks, and burn an effigy of Guy Fawkes, celebrating his failure to blow up Parliament and James I. He jumped to his death on today's date in the year 1606. And on today's date in 1865, the U.S. House of Representatives passes the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolishing slavery in America. The amendment read, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." When the Civil War began, President Abraham Lincoln's professed goal was the restoration of the Union. But early in the war, the Union began keeping escaped enslaved people rather than returning them to their owners. So slavery essentially ended wherever the Union Army was victorious. In 1862, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing all enslaved people in the areas that were still in rebellion against the Union. And this measure opened the issue of what to do about slavery in border states that had not seceded or in areas that had been captured by the Union before the proclamation. But it was the 13th Amendment sent to the states for ratification, which came in December of 1865. With the passage of the amendment, the institution that had indelibly shaped American history was eradicated. On today's date, in 1865, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution abolishing slavery in America. And on this last day of January in the year 1917, Germany announces the renewal of unrestricted submarine warfare in the Atlantic as German torpedo-armed submarines prepare to attack any and all ships, including civilian passenger carriers, said to be sighted in war-zone waters. When World War I erupted, President Woodrow Wilson pledged neutrality for the U.S., a position that the vast majority of Americans favored. Britain, however, was one of America's closest trading partners, and tensions soon arose between the U.S. and Germany over the latter's attempted blockade of the British Isles, and several U.S. ships traveling to Britain were damaged or sunk by German mines. The Germans' most formidable naval weapon was the U-boat, a submarine far more sophisticated than those built by other nations at that time. And the typical U-boat was 214 feet long, carried 35 men and 12 torpedoes, and could travel underwater for 2 hours at a time. In the first few years of World War I, the U-boats took a terrible toll on Allied shipping. And then it was in the end of January in 1917 that Germany, determined to win its war of attrition against the Allies, announced the resumption of unrestricted warfare. 3 days later, the U.S. broke off diplomatic relations with Germany, and just hours after that, the American liner Housatonic was sunk by a German U-boat. None of the 25 Americans on board were killed, and they were picked up later by a British steamer. But on today's date, Germany announced the renewal of unrestricted submarine warfare in the Atlantic, as these German torpedo-armed submarines prepare to attack any and all ships, including civilian passenger carriers, that were sighted in war-zone waters. It was on the 6th of June in 1944, considered one of the most pivotal moments in modern history, better known by its code name D-Day, that the Allied assault on 5 beaches in Nazi-occupied France was the result of over a year of planning and jockeying amongst various military and political leaders. But on today's date, the 31st of January in 1944, several key leaders agreed to postpone that invasion over concerns there would not be enough ships available by early May, finally setting the stage for the June invasion. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin began urging Prime Minister Winston Churchill to open a second front almost as soon as the Nazis invaded Russia in 1941. And after the American entry into the war at the end of that year, the three nations agreed that such action was necessary, but disagreed on how it should proceed. And so that date was changed to June the 6th in 1944. That postponement happened on today's date in 1944. And on the 31st of January in 1950, President Harry Truman publicly announces his decision to support the development of the hydrogen bomb, a weapon theorized to be hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bombs dropped on Japan during World War II. 5 months earlier, the U.S. had lost its nuclear supremacy when the Soviet Union successfully detonated an atomic bomb at their test site in Kazakhstan. And several weeks after that, British and U.S. intelligence came to the staggering conclusion that German-born Klaus Fox, a top-ranking scientist in the U.S. nuclear program, was a spy for the Soviet Union. And these two events and the fact that the Soviets now knew everything that the Americans did about how to build a hydrogen bomb led Harry Truman to approve massive funding for the superpower race to complete the world's first superbomb, as he described it in his public announcement on today's date in the year 1950. And on this day in 1968, as part of the Tet Offensive, a squad of Viet Cong guerrillas attacks the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. The soldiers seized the embassy and held it for 6 hours until an assault force of U.S. paratroopers landed by helicopter on the building's roof and routed the Viet Cong. The Tet Offensive was planned as a massive simultaneous attack on the major cities and provincial capitals of South Vietnam, scheduled to take place during Tet, the Vietnamese Lunar New Year celebration, which was traditionally a time of decreased fighting. And in December earlier, following an attack on the U.S. Marine base at Khe Sanh, 50,000 American troops were sent in to defend the area, thereby weakening U.S. positions elsewhere. And this American response played into the Viet Cong's strategy to clear the way for the surprise Tet Offensive, in which communist forces attacked Saigon, Hue, the imperial capital, and over 100 other urban areas. And this timing and magnitude of the attacks caught the South Vietnamese and American forces off guard, although they quickly recovered and recaptured the occupied areas. Militarily, the Tet Offensive was a disaster for the communists, who suffered devastating losses. However, while the offensive was a crushing military defeat, the communists scored a huge psychological victory that would ultimately help them win the war. The graphic images of U.S. casualties suffered during the offensive helped stoke anti-war sentiment among the American people, who had grown tired of this long conflict. Active U.S. combat troops had been in Vietnam since 1965, and the U.S. first sent in military advisors in 1961. Apollo 14, piloted by astronauts Alan Shepard Jr., Edgar Mitchell, and Stuart Roosa, successfully launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida on a manned mission to the moon. And that happened on today's date in the year 1971. And on the 5th of February, a few days later, after suffering some initial problems in docking the lunar and command modules, Shepard and Mitchell descended to the lunar surface on the third U.S. moon landing. Upon stepping out of the lunar module, Shepard, who in 1961 aboard Freedom 7 was the first American in space, became the 5th astronaut to walk on the moon. They remained on the lunar surface for nearly 34 hours, conducting simple scientific experiments, such as hitting golf balls into space with Shepard's golf club and collecting 96 pounds of lunar samples. And on the 9th of February, Apollo 14 safely returned to Earth. It was piloted by these 3 astronauts and successfully launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida on a manned mission to the moon on today's date in 1971. And on the 31st of January in 1988. In San Diego, California, Doug Williams of the Washington Redskins, now known as the Washington Commanders, becomes the first African-American quarterback to play in a Super Bowl, scoring 4 of Washington's 5 touchdowns in an upset 42-10 victory over the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 22. Denver was favored to win the game, and they started strong as star quarterback John Elway threw a 56-yard touchdown pass to Ricky Nattiel on the team's first play from scrimmage. And that all happened when Doug Williams leads the Redskins to Super Bowl victory on today's date in the year 1988, and it happened in San Diego. The Soviet Union's first McDonald's fast food restaurant opens in Moscow on today's date in the year 1990. Throngs of people line up to pay the equivalent of several days' wages for Big Macs, shakes, and French fries. The appearance of this notorious symbol of capitalism and the enthusiastic reception it received from the Russian people were signs that times were changing in the Soviet Union. An American journalist on the scene reported the customers seemed most amazed at the simple sight of polite shop workers in this nation of commercial boorishness. A Soviet journalist had a more practical opinion, stating that the restaurant was the expression of America's rationalism and pragmatism towards food. Also noted that the contrast with our own unrealized pretensions is both sad and challenging. For the average Russian customer, however, visiting the restaurant was less a political statement than an opportunity to enjoy a small pleasure in a country still reeling from disastrous economic problems and internal political turmoil. The arrival of McDonald's in Moscow was a small but certain sign that a change was on the horizon. In fact, less than 2 years later, the Soviet Union ceased to exist as a nation. Mikhail Gorbachev resigned as leader of the country, and various Soviet republics proclaimed their independence. As the American newsman reported, the first Russian McDonald's customers had seen the future, and it works, at least as far as their digestive tract is concerned. Those were some stories from the annals of history that happened on this last date of January. It's another chilly start to the morning as temperatures did fall into the low mid-40s, but you will not need your jacket today as afternoon highs jump up to the mid-70s. By the way, we hit 77 yesterday, above average temperatures continuing in the Dallas-Fort Worth area through the weekend. And we'll be in the 70s again tomorrow as well as Friday, but then we'll see some wind increases from the south and high clouds will start to stream but thicken more on Friday, and our next weather change will arrive late Friday, especially through the evening, lasting through noon on Saturday, and rain should also be seen. We'll keep you updated right here on Community Radio Networks. I have huge thanks going out to support from Discount Power, Houston EB5, Aluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, My Kolachi, the Ruchi Palace, Shri Vimal, Eggaholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flashbrush Productions for their support of Community Radio Networks. Please remember this Saturday that is coming up, Beauty of Humanity is arranging their annual fundraising event at the Doubletree by Hilton in Richardson, and the chief guest is Azhar Aziz. We have Shazia Khan's number here if you need any more information on this event, which is a get-together. There'll be snacks, fundraising, dinner, and a Mazaya Mushaira that'll start after dinner. Number to call Shazia is 972-948-1965. 972-948-1965. There is a Hunger Mitao initiative supporting the North Texas Food Bank through pre-loved ethnic wear. It's calling on fashionistas to donate new or pre-loved saris, ethnic men and women party wear and accessories, which will be sold or auctioned at a later date to raise funds for the North Texas Food Bank. Now, the collection continues until the 10th of this month. If you are in Coppell, you can call Kiran, 972-333-7093, and she will give you the numbers of other cities where there are the people who are in charge of taking those donations. Also on the 10th of February at 7 o'clock, we have a Ghazal night with Imran Seher, who sings the Ghazals of Jagjit Singh. It's a Valentine's Day special, and it will be at the Ruchi Palace by Mai Kolachi on the 10th of February. If you need more information, please call Andy Lalani. His number is 817-883-33 33, and your tickets are on Eventbrite. The Grand Center is presenting Celebrate Love, a Valentine's party on Friday the 16th of February at 8 o'clock at the Grand Center with exotic drinks, cocktails, appetizers, food, live DJ and live singing and lots of entertainment. And the music by Music Must Be Magic. That's DJ Manish. Your tickets are available at sulekha.com, or for more information you can contact Gagan Bhalla. His number is 469-878-1112. Nasir Siddiqui of Hiba Entertainment and Vimal Kansara are presenting Daisy Shah and Ali Quli Mirza and a Bollywood Valentine night at Vimal's venue, which is on West Airport Freeway in Irving. It's happening on Saturday, the 17th of February. And for more information, you can call Vimalji at 817 881 2121. 817 881 2121. Also on that Saturday, the 17th of February, Helping Hearts and Caring Souls are having the annual fundraising dinner and entertainment supporting people with disabilities in Pakistan. It's going to be at the Crystal Banquet Hall in Plano, and the entertainment will be a tribute to Madam Noor Jahan by her granddaughter, Saima Jahan, who will be here in Dallas on the 17th of February. Please call Anjum Anwar for more information. The number is 469-556 6475, 469-556-6475 for this fundraiser. And your presence is the heartbeat of the upcoming impactful event. Your kindness and compassion will shine brightly on this very special night filled with music and dinner. The U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce are having their Spirit of Innovation Technology competition next month, and then their business plan competition in April. But they do want you all to mark the 1st of March for the 8th Annual Women's Conference. The Annual Women's Conference provides professional and entrepreneurial women with a platform to be inspired, to network, and to grow. And so please mark that, the 1st of March. And more information is available on the Chamber's website, which is usicoc.org, US-India Chamber of Commerce.org, and we hope to see all of you on the 1st of March. On the 2nd of March, a English family play called Maya, written and directed by Sumit Rekhi. It will be shown at the NAC Theatre in Frisco. And Jubin Nautiyal will be live in concert on Sunday, the 3rd of March at the Curtis Culwell Center, brought to you by 360 Shows, Diamond Productions and Universal Entertainment. For more information, please call Muhammad Abbas. His number is 214-679-6818, 214-679-6818 for Jubin Nautiyal live in concert. Your tickets are also available at tinyurl.com/Jubin Dallas. Festival of Colors, the 14th Annual Festival of Colors, Holi Mela, on the 23rd of March, and it's at the South Fork Ranch. If you need more information, please go to the website dallasfestivalofcolors.com. Also, the Texas Women's Society is presenting McKinney Asian Festival, a cultural food, live performance, fun activities, lantern walk, and much more in this festival on the 23rd of March from 11 to 6 at the Dr. Glenn Mitchell Memorial Park on Louisiana Street in McKinney. And we are thrilled to invite you to the 2024 Pratham Dallas Fort Worth Gala, an extraordinary evening dedicated to empowering children and young people in India to transform their lives and communities. It's happening on Saturday, the 20th of April at the Omni Frisco Hotel, and this year's gala theme is Changing Lives, Transforming Communities, will be highlighted, and the remarkable impact of Pratham's work in expanding access to quality learning opportunities will be shown at the gala that evening. So please mark your calendars for the 20th of April and join us for an unforgettable evening of exquisite dining, inspiring company, and a cause that really matters. Pratham Dallas Fort Worth. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in your social calendar for the moment. Anything else that comes up, we'll get it to you right here on Community Radio Networks. And that's all the information that I have for you right here for you to take on this last day of January. I do have huge thanks going out one more time to Discount Power, to Houston EB5, to the Alawalia Law Offices, to the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, to Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, My Kalachi, Ruchi Palace, Shri Vimal, Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flashbrush Productions. For those of you that would like to reach me for any questions you have about Community Radio Networks, I'll be happy to take your calls at 214-675-1754. 214-675-1754. 1754.